We're looking at storytelling for startups. Welcome to Tea at Taxevity, where you get insights from insiders, our many clients and friends. I'm Pramod Sharma, the actuary at Taxevity. I help people who care about sustainable financial independence harness the power of life and health insurance. Our guest today is Mark Evans. Mark, what do you do when you're not being interviewed?
Well, I help startups and fast-growing companies tell better stories, which is also known as marketing. So a lot of it is essentially helping companies get started with marketing. Many of them, want to, but they don't know where to go, what to do. And my job is to offer them strategic and tactical guidance.
And you do have a brand new book, Storytelling for Startups. What was the reason for writing a book?
I think in the beginning, I saw a lot of other people write books, and as somebody who spent a lot of years as a newspaper reporter, I am a writer by trade, and I just saw it as a way to do some professional branding and to differentiate myself from a lot of the other consultants out there. And it's been an interesting journey because it's taken me, I think it's going to take me in new directions in terms of where my business is going.
Okay, that's good to see that it's had those benefits. What makes your book different from other books, though?
That's a great question, because one of the things I did in writing the book was I actually started to study business books. And there's a formula that they use. They usually
formula? Okay.
Well, there's a template. They have a thesis. Right. And what I found is that in most books, the thesis is essentially told in about 30 or 40 pages. And after that, they spend the rest of the book, the book's around 200 pages, the rest of the book just sort of expounding on the thesis. And it's like, I already got that. I already know that.
I think you're right, because sometimes you see a TED Talk, and then you get the book, and then, hey, I got the whole thing in 18 minutes. Why am I reading it for 7 or 8 hours?
Well, that's exactly right. And I think there's a lot of filler. And I think most of those books are probably 30-page ebooks. And so my book is different in the sense that, yes, I start off talking about the benefits and the value of storytelling, but then I get into the different aspects of storytelling, how to discover your audience, how to build a storytelling strategy, how to listen to your target audiences, and then break down the different storytelling channels, best practices, exercises, tools, case studies, so that it's the kind of book that you can read the whole thing, which would be awesome, or you can read chunks of it depending on what you want to do and what kind of stories you want to tell.
It sounds like what you're providing in the book is enough that people can use it on their own. It's practical, it's self-help.
Yeah, it's practical, it's accessible, and I think it's mostly like a resource that sits on your desk. So if one day you decide that you want to start to do infographics, you can go to the book and read the section about infographics. And it gives you sort of a running start on what are the value of infographics, what are the best ways to create them, and what are the tools. And then if you want to use it for a white paper or a case study, you can use the book for that as well.
I like that approach because it lets people jump to the part they want, and if they do want to know about infographics, that's the part they can get to right away.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's a companion, and I think that's the value of the book in the sense that it'll provide you with months and months of advice if and when you need it.
Who is the book for?
So the book title is Storytelling for Startups. From a branding perspective, that's probably a good way to go, given how excited people are about startups these days. But it's really for entrepreneurs and small business owners. It's for people who may not have the expertise in marketing, but certainly they want to do it. And it gives them sort of strategic and tactical insight so that they can either create their own stories / marketing,
right,
or they'll have enough knowledge that they can turn to a third party like a consultant or a specialist and say, I want to do this, and they've got the knowledge to say, and this is how I want to do it. So they're not operating blind.
Why does storytelling even matter?
That's a great question. So I've been telling stories for 25 years as a reporter and as an entrepreneur and as a consultant. And my thesis is that we live in a very busy, noisy world these days. So social media is almost ubiquitous. Everybody's doing it. Everybody's engaging and having conversations and sharing content. And on top of that, we've got this whole content marketing movement where brands suddenly have to become publishers. So they're pumping out tons and tons of content. And people are overwhelmed, and it's really increasingly difficult to get their attention for even a short period of time. And I think that storytelling allows companies to capture the spotlight and to get people to pay attention because they're different, and they connect with people in different ways. A lot of great stories are establish great emotional connections. And emotions are a really important variable because that's how we make a lot of our decisions, both in terms of our personal lives and how we operate professionally. And I think that companies that become good at storytelling can not only establish a competitive advantage, but something they can keep that competitive advantage, unlike social media and content marketing where everyone's caught up to everybody else.
Okay. And how true do the stories need to be?
I think that authenticity matters. In the marketing world, we often use the adage "perception is reality," and in some ways that's true because you can create this image of who you are and what your products do. But at the end of the day, because of social media, because of content marketing, people will discover who you really are. So I think stories do have to be true and authentic, and they have to be they have to sort of reflect your brand values and your product values, and at the same time, they have to be true because that's the way that you get your stories to resonate with target audiences, in the way that it's things that they can relate to. It's experiences that they can see themselves as part of that overall experience. So if they're not true, then it's difficult for people to really get into them.
Okay. It just seems that sometimes you see stories from big brands or people who look like they're small brands, and then you find out that, oh, they're owned by some mega conglomerate, but you read the packaging and it sounds like they're very different than they actually are.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think a lot of brands try to sort of create different types of experiences. They're a big global conglomerate, but they want to be seen as a scrappy startup.
Yes.
So you look at Molson, for example, which owns Creemore. Creemore, people look at Creemore being this craft beer, but it's not a craft beer anymore. It's made by Molson.
Right.
But from a sales and marketing perspective, Molson wants it to have that brand perception. And that's a game that brands will play. But I think at the end of the day, that you have to be true to yourself, you have to be true to your consumers.
Who creates the story?
For small business, that's the key question, because yes, they get excited about marketing and storytelling, but I think a lot of brands get stuck, or small businesses get stuck, because the strategy is great, but the tactical execution is the hard part. So in some respects, it can really start with doing it yourself. And I think the key for that is adopting this mantra that less is more. So that rather than trying to tell stories in a multiple of different places, you focus on a couple of channels. So for example, it could be based on how our target audiences learn about our products, that video is the best thing that we could do because our target audiences love video. So all you'll do from a storytelling perspective is make great videos and focus all your time and energy on videos, or it could be blogs for that matter. And if you have the resources in terms of time and money, and there's things that you want to do, then you can look for third parties that are specialists so that they can do a great job of helping you craft stories. You can direct them, you have to direct them, but there's an ROI on paying somebody else to do it. But I think fundamentally, if you can do them as a small business owner, if you can do them yourself, even if it's just a small number of storytelling options, I think that I think it's entirely doable.
One of the big challenges in small business, and especially with a startup, is that there's a lot of work going on. Telling stories just seems to add to the workload. Where do companies and people find the time?
Well, I think you have to find the time these days, because storytelling is increasingly important. And that if you want to market and sell effectively, is that you have to figure out, how do we embrace storytelling in some way, shape, or form? It could be a lot of storytelling or a small bit of storytelling, but it has to be part of your corporate operations. It has to be the way that you do business. Otherwise, you're going to get outflanked, and your business is not going to do as well because everybody else will be doing a better job of telling stories. So it could be seen as a necessary evil, but you got to do it. And it may mean doing less of other things.
Right, prioritization.
Exactly, and I think that's the number one word that I'm focused on these days is prioritization, and maybe number two would be ROI. If you prioritize, then your chances of getting ROI are a lot higher.
Can you give us an example of a story that you tell about your own business?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I talk about is that running a small business is really a continual series of pivots, micro pivots, really small pivots. Because the reality of business, small business, is that you've got to stay viable, you've got to stay valid, you've got to read where the market's going, and you've got to be selling what people want to buy. Mm-hmm. And I talk about my journey where I started as a social media consultant and realized that A, it wasn't really what I wanted to do, and B, there was a lot of competition out there. Mm-hmm. And then made the pivot into startup marketing because I liked the idea of startup marketing. I saw that a lot of startups would need marketing services. And now with the book, I'm almost in the midst of another pivot towards storytelling and positioning myself as a brand storytelling person who can help small and large companies embrace the power of storytelling. And so that's the kind of story that I like to tell because it reflects the reality of running a small business. Nothing stays the same, and you can't be complacent because the market will go by you.
Mm-hmm. You could be established in your business, but making these pivots makes you a startup of sorts.
Yeah, I think that's part of the entrepreneurial spirit, and I think savvy entrepreneurs are always looking for different angles and different ways to grow their businesses. And part of being an entrepreneur is you're looking for new opportunities, and you give yourself permission to have that agility to seize new opportunities.
You've just completed a 2-year journey in writing your book. What's next?
That's a great question. So I think I've got something good, at least I believe it's good, and there's lots of different options out there. But I would say the 2 paths that I'm going to pursue are one, creating storytelling workshops that I can then offer to companies of all sizes, because I think having that interactive, engaged learning environment is something that a lot of companies can benefit from. And the other thing I think is, as a writer, I'm also excited about the idea of writing a series of ebooks in terms of small, focused areas to help people achieve specific things in their business. So I think that's number 1 and number 2. And I'm hoping that there'll be some speaking opportunities and maybe do an online course somewhere down the line.
Okay. What's your main message for the people watching today?
Other than buy my book?
Okay, that works.
Well, that could be a main message, but I think the main message is storytelling matters. We live in very busy, noisy world, and that for brands that want to stand out from the crowd is that they have to start telling stories.
What's the best way for people to reach you?
Well, you can go to the book's website, which is storytellingforstartups.ca, or you can go to my business website, which is markevans.ca.
Thanks very much for dropping by.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us for Tea at Taxevity. The Taxevity Insurance Advisory helps you understand insurance and bridges gaps in your coverage. There's no premium for peace of mind. How healthy is your insurance?